Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. And if you can tell, I did have a child's birthday party this last week, which was a lot of work. I am not used to having so many children running around my house, but it was a lot of fun. It has been a crazy few weeks. So I have books that I really need to talk about because it has been a minute and I need to catch up on. And I also have a knitting update. So my terrible update. I finished the sweater for my husband. And it turned out bad. It was the wrong size. I knew my gauge was a little off. It had been my first attempt at color work and my tension was a little wonky. There were so many things wrong with it that I felt like I had little choice but to frog the entire thing, tear it apart, and I've been working on the sweater again. So I am almost done with the bodice of the sweater. So let me show you what I've got so far. Oh, it is quite the depressing thing to have to start again on a project, but I'm actually much happier with the sweater this time around. So I've got the color work around here. I've got the bodice. I just have a little bit more here and then the ribbing. And then I'll get to the sleeves. So give me a couple more weeks and I will finally have this sweater done for my husband. I'm very excited to get to some other knitting projects, but I have learned a lot starting again on this. I mean, look at that. That color work looks so much neater. I am so much happier with how it is turning out this time. So that is the knitting update. And let's get into the books that I have read this last week or so. Now, this first book was a book that I did as a buddy read with the amazing Tiffany at Towering TBR. So make sure to check out her channel. This is The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is an alternate history book. We are jumping in 1952 and there is a huge meteorite that hits Earth. And so history is changed when the whole eastern part of the United States is obliterated and there is suddenly a desperate need to get into space. The space race is less about proving technology and more about survival of humanity because the Earth is not going to stay very habitable after this giant extinction level event. So we have our main character, Alma York, and she is an amazing mathematician and an experienced WASP pilot, and she wants to be an astronaut. And she has to deal with so much of the sexism, and it goes through her journey of trying to become an astronaut, working with other very talented women. So I really liked the premise of this. I went into the book very blind, so I had no idea what I was getting into, but I was hooked right away. So I think what really didn't work for me was just the characterization. I wanted to care so much more about these characters and get to know more of them. And the only person that we see any sort of depth in is our main character, Alma. And everyone else is some sort of cartoonish character or just completely forgettable. Her husband is so steadfast and supportive. She has a super sexist guy that she has to deal with in the office. She has these supportive, go-get-em female friends. And I just never felt like I connected on an emotional level with any of these characters, which is too bad because I think that the premise really had a lot of promise, but the pacing ended up feeling a little slow after a really fast, engaging start. And there were just too many big emotions that should have been discussed with all of your family getting obliterated by a meteorite. There were some things that I wish we had had the time to explore, that the author had gone more into, and instead it was skated over, and the only emotions that I really felt from the main character were her irritation and anger at the sexist treatment that she was receiving. And as a feminist kind of book goes, I did find the ideas to be fairly on the basic side. I do think that if the author didn't have anything new to say from the rah-rah girl boss side of things, she could have focused more on some of the emotional trials. I did definitely go into some of Elma's mental health instead of having her understandably upset about some of the real and scary things that were going on and have that cause her anxiety. The author chose to have her scared of public speaking, which is a perfectly valid thing to be anxious about. I'm not saying that's not. It almost felt like something just squished in there. And overall, I didn't really love this book. It is a series. I am not going to be continuing with it, but as always, it is a delight to be able to read this with Tiffany. This next book was a recommendation from Deborah at Bookin' with Deborah, and this was Frankie by Graham Norton. And yes, the Graham Norton who is the television personality. This story follows Frankie and Damien. Damien is caring for Frankie. Frankie is older, and they develop a friendship, and Frankie tells Damien about her life story. And so you follow her lonely childhood, her early marriage, and her dazzling life in the art scene in the 1960s in New York. And this was really sweet and heartfelt. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Ultimately, I find it maybe just a little bit on the forgettable side. I do think it was interesting talking about the AIDS epidemic. It went through some of the difficulties around that. Basically, with Frankie, I enjoyed it. I thought her story was fine. I don't know if it's going to stay with me forever. I just don't know if Damien's story really brought all that much to the narrative, but I think it did give excuses to skip large chunks of the story in the name of, oh, well, that's not important. I'm just going to tell you the exciting parts of my life story, which, I mean, I guess worked. So overall, it was fine. Now, this next book I think was a recommendation from Melinda at A Web of Stories, so make sure to check out her channel down below. And I read In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez, and this book was excellent. This is a historical fiction book that is a fictionalized account of the real-life Mirabal sisters in the Trujillo dictatorship in the Dominican Republic. And this is back in the 60s. And we get a little bit of these sisters growing up. It's told mostly through diary, journal entries, looking back at their lives and what led up to their assassination. And I thought this book was really well done. I think my only teensy tiny complaint would be I thought that sometimes the sisters weren't necessarily easy to distinguish. And I think the author gave them each a thing so that you could say, oh no, it's this sister, it's this sister. You can say the religious one, the baby one, the radical one, the scared one. And you can just kind of put them in those boxes. And so, I mean, I didn't love that, but you know what? It was such a good story, such a good historical fiction. This is what I want from my historical fiction. I want my historical fiction to tell me an engaging story. I want it to introduce me to a time and place of which I was not previously aware. And I want a historical fiction to do all that in a way that makes me want to learn more. And I think that this did that. It was a very tragic story and definitely the author's own fictionalized account. It was also based in a lot of reality, and I thought it was just really, really well done. This was first published in 1994, but it still feels just so fresh and relevant. I am really, really glad that I gave this one some time. This next book, I believe, was a recommendation from Jolene at Bookworm Adventure Girl, so I will link her channel down below. And I read More or Less Maddy by Lisa Genova. This is a novel about a young woman who is diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It goes over some of her relationships, her breakup, her early college career, and some of her mental health struggles, as well as her desire to become a stand-up comedian. And I thought this book did a really great job at getting you into the head of somebody who has bipolar disorder. It really felt like you were stuck in her head. You could see how she would go through those really, really low depressions and was unable to do anything, as well as those periods of mania and everything going so fast and feeling like she is on top of the world and not being able to stop it or to fix it, and how she can't quite stop making these bad decisions. I thought this book was really good in the introducing you to bipolar disorder. I really did care about Maddy. I liked learning about her story. Some of her story was very tragic and difficult. And overall, I really thought this book was good. My only little caveat to that is I did start kind of feeling like it was a PSA for mental health struggles. So that was my one kind of like little thing, like, okay, I feel like I just learned this is what bipolar disorder is like. But overall, I enjoyed this book. I thought it was well done, and I do recommend it. And that is what I have read the past little while. If you have any thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.